We are so back on Patton Avenue right now. I am making my triumphant return to the homeland of my YouTube career, the worst road in Asheville. Welcome to the former Arby's of Patton Avenue in West Asheville, North Carolina. It has been vacant for about 10 years, providing no public good to the community. I think it would be better if instead of an abandoned Arby's, we had some housing here. And that's not just my own silly idea. It's aligned with the 2018 Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan. The city's comprehensive plan from 2018 designates which part of the city should grow and specifically focuses on transit corridors. The Patton Avenue corridor should be redeveloped as a mix of uses, including dense housing, according to the comprehensive plan. As much bad stuff as I have to say about Patton Avenue, I do want to see it get better. And this parcel is directly in front of a bus stop with 3 transit lines, and there are 2 grocery stores across the street. Also, it's walkable to the center point of Haywood Road in West Asheville, so it actually does make a lot of sense to put dense housing here. But the corridor hasn't seen any redevelopment at all since the comprehensive plan was adopted in 2018. What gives? The answer to why the Patton Avenue corridor hasn't been redeveloped in the past 6 years lies in conditional rezoning thresholds, which sounds so boring, but it's really simple and extremely important. Basically, with a given parcel zoning, in this case, highway business, there are certain things that you're allowed to do by right, and then there are certain restrictions on what you can't do. If the development that you want to build is outside of any of those restrictions, it becomes a conditional rezoning, which just means you can get special variances that mean that you don't have to follow certain rules. The trade-off with conditional rezonings is that they have to be approved by City Council, which comes with several negative impacts. First, it requires extra work for the approvals process, which costs the developer money. Secondly, it increases the timeline of the project and makes everything take longer, which also costs the developer money. And third, it opens public comment to NIMBYs who want to prevent that housing from getting built and allows them to push to have the project not get conditionally rezoned, which would kill the project. And finally, the approval process comes with all of these costs, and if the project does not get approved, then those are all sunk costs for the developer, meaning that conditional rezonings are high risk. They mean that you could lose all of the money that you've already put into the process of trying to get the conditional rezoning done. And you might say, I don't care about additional costs to the developer. But the thing is, when conditional zoning projects get approved, the costs from the process of the conditional rezoning are built into the cost of the units that they're selling so that they can make their money back from it. So it actually makes housing more expensive for the end buyer or renter. How do we know that this conditional rezoning process has negative outcomes? Well, 70% of the development is happening outside of city limits. And that's an environmental catastrophe because it means clearing huge amounts of land in order to create housing that could just be done as infill, that would be less environmentally destructive, require less energy from the people who live there, and improve the quality of the city while also expanding the city's tax base. Given the constraints of highway business zoning, let's see what we can legally build by right on the Arby's parcel without having to seek a conditional rezoning. There's a required 35-foot setback from the front street, 25 feet from the side street, and 10 feet from the back, which reduces the buildable area of the lot. There's a 60-foot height minimum that limits the building to 5 stories tall. We also have residential parking minimums, 1 space per unit with 2 bedrooms or less, and 2 spaces for units with 3 bedrooms or more. The impact of these residential parking minimums on the layout of the site and the number of units that can be produced on a given site can't be overstated because it totally shapes where the housing can go and how much of it can be built, depending on how much parking you can fit. Highway business zoning has a maximum residential density cap of 35 units an acre. On this 0.78 acre parcel with the abandoned Arby's, we can only build 27 units of housing by right. But there's a density incentive in place. That means if you build 20% of your units as affordable units, then you can get twice the density, and we can build 54 units on this parcel. Except we can't because of conditional rezoning thresholds. The threshold for residential development in Asheville is 50 units. So anything more than 49 units of housing automatically becomes a conditional rezoning that has to get approved by City Council. There's one exception to this in the zoning code, which is in the central business district that covers downtown, where the conditional zoning threshold for residential is 100,000 square feet, expressed in square feet, not in units. And that actually matches the citywide thresholds for conditional rezonings for office and commercial and industrial. By setting the conditional rezoning threshold for residential development outside of the central business district at 50 units instead of 100,000 square feet, just like we have for residential in downtown and for all other uses citywide, we are taxing housing. Here's why. The average unit of housing in Asheville is about 850 square feet. By multiplying that number by the 49 unit maximum, you get 41,650 square feet, which is less than half the size available to all other uses. If someone wants to build a 100,000 square foot development for housing in Asheville, they can do that. It just means that the units are going to be double the size and therefore more expensive. This encourages developers to build larger, more expensive units. If we update the conditional zoning threshold from 50 units to 100,000 square feet, we can activate corridors like Patton Avenue, and we can do it while providing a larger number of units that will be more affordable. So it's been almost 6 years since the Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan was adopted, and the vision for the Patton Avenue corridor has clearly not materialized. What would it take to make it happen? Well, it says right in the plan. In the short term, strategically update the Unified Development Ordinance for the identified transit supportive centers. Amend other sections of the UDO as necessary to implement plan strategies. In other words, we need to make updates to the zoning code that make it legal and easy to build new housing. Speaking of updates to the zoning code that will make it legal, cheaper, and easier to build new housing in the city, the Planning and Zoning Commission just recommended 2 new amendments to the UDO, which are both very important to this issue. Do you remember how I said that no more than 49 units of housing can be built in its... Oh, God. Do you remember when I said that it's illegal to build more than 49 units of housing at a time in Asheville without it automatically becoming a conditional zoning that's approved by City Council? Well, the First Amendment would change that, and it would change the threshold from 50 units to 100,000 square feet, which is really important. The other very important UDO text amendment, which has been recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission to be potentially approved by City Council, would remove minimum parking requirements on residential uses within a quarter mile of transit corridors and within a half mile of transit stops. This is very important for our ability to build up our housing supply as a city. The timeline could change, but right now it looks like the June 11th meeting is when City Council is going to vote yes or no on these recommendations. So if you think that the barriers to building lots of new housing supply in Asheville to make our affordability crisis better, to ease our housing crisis, to ease our homelessness crisis, which is the only solution that we know actually works, then you should support these text amendments by either showing up in person at City Council on June 11th or by writing an email, which is super easy, and you can do it right now. In fact, I've included the email to send it to and templates for the email in the description. The best thing you can do is send 2 separate emails. It does not matter what the body text is really, as long as you express your support for the UDO text amendments, and you should send them both as separate emails. Do it right now. Be sure to do it before the June 11th meeting. This is critical for the well-being and growth of our city. Thanks for watching. I'm sure I'll be back on Patton Avenue at some point in the very near future. Bye-bye.